introduction. Instead of taking you through some slides of Temple Group, we thought it's best maybe to just speak and give you an overview of what we do. A lot of you in the room already know Temple Group, and for those of you who don't, we're basically a firm of lawyers, accountants, corporate administrators, and compliance teams. So we do a lot of commercial and case law from our legal team, which is where Christelle is a partner. Everything from mergers and acquisitions to insolvency to looking at disciplinary hearings or just getting onboarding with clients from their legal perspective. Christelle and her team do it. They've been doing it for over 2 decades. The chambers are headed by a senior counsel, Mrs. Bullet, which also gives you an insight about the kind of work that the chambers have been doing all along. To complement the services that the legal team offers, I, as a consultant, oversee what we call the corporate services, which is a combination of offshore management company, accounting, and advisory. In the offshore management sector, obviously we look at global businesses, we look at trusts, we look at foundations. We also try and look at onboarding of clients locally. We do a lot of domestic work. We provide accounting, payroll, and other kinds of support. But we also do a lot of advisory work. I mean, we've done advisory work for telecom companies. We've helped set up somebody a hydroponic farm, and that kind of situation. So our team is always doing a lot of research for our clients so that they can understand the local topography and benefit from our research and maybe some of our advice. We also do a lot of compliance work, which is something we do for the trade itself. We do a lot of compliance work for management companies, for insurance companies, for even law firms, for boards of directors. We do codes of conduct, we do good governance. In effect, anything to do with the legal financial services, any compliance work or assistance to compliance is provided by us. We are also authorized dealers for legal publications like LexisNexis and Thomson Reuters. And if you've noticed outside, we are also now authorized examiners for anti-money laundering certification. So there's a whole lot of services that the group offers. And whilst today's presentation is to do specifically about living and working in Mauritius, just to give you an idea of what the group is all about, I thought we should give you a little bit of perspective. Thanks, Peter, for that. And my colleague Christelle will now take you through the actual framework, maybe. Thank you very much.
Welcome all of you. Since I think less than 2 years ago, at Temple Group we launched the expat-based services in collaboration with the BOI, which also came here for a presentation when we did these services. Over those 2 years, there have been many changes. While Ravi shall highlight later on what are the advantages of coming to work and live in Mauritius, the BOI shall talk about the economic strategy and also the role of the BOI pertaining to the as business facilitator. I shall have the boring role of guiding you through all the legislation in Mauritius pertaining to working, living, and doing business in Mauritius. The main act itself is the Investment Promotion Act. This is the act which establishes the BOI and also sets out the role of the BOI as a business facilitator. This is also the act which provides for registration as professional, investors, self-employed, and retired non-citizens. The professional will normally be someone employed here in Mauritius under contract of employment with a minimum of a salary of 60,000 rupees, or if in the city sector, it could be not less than 30,000 rupees. As far as the investor concerned, there is certain requirements pertaining to investment to be made in Mauritius. Initial investment of 1,000 USD, and then also annual income. The first year should be 2 million, and the second and third year an aggregate of 10 million rupees. As far as the self-employed is concerned, it would normally be an initial investment of 35,000 rupees, 35,000 USD, and then annual also income of, if I'm not mistaken, 3 million rupees. And last but not least, retired non-citizen. Retired non-citizen meaning that if you would like to retire in Mauritius, you just have to make a transfer of 45,000 USD. Over and above the individuals who can be registered as professional investor or self-employed or even retired non-citizens, there are also various schemes which have been set out under the Investment Promotion Act. There was previously the IOS and the RES, which still there are some projects under these schemes, but there is also now the Invest Hotel Scheme and the Property Development Scheme, and also the Smart City Scheme. What is most interesting since last year, I think it's the introduction of the regulatory sandbox license. What this really means is that this is a temporary license, normally given by the BOI for at least a year, renewable. As at now, if I'm not mistaken, there is only one license which has been issued by the BOI. This is mainly for innovative projects where there are no legal framework or no adequate legal provisions pertaining to a particular type of project. Once you are registered, be it as a professional or under one of the scheme or even have a regulatory sandbox license, how now you stay or in Mauritius is with respect to the provisions of the Immigration Act. The Immigration Act effectively regulates entry and stay of non-citizens in Mauritius. You have the residence permit. The residence permit can be for various categories of persons. Initially, it was only with respect to residence permit, work permit. Work permit meaning you have to seek the approval of the Ministry of Labour instead of the BOI. Normally, that would be for, let's say, the manufacturing sector, or people having less than 30,000 rupees. You would normally go to the Ministry of Labour for a work permit, and then you would also apply separately for residence permit. You have the occupation permit, which I've just said that if you are registered normally as a professional investor or self-employed, you would have an occupation permit, which allows you both to stay and work in Mauritius. If you are registered as a retired non-citizen, you will only get a residence permit. And also, if you acquire property under the various schemes, you will get a residence permit. Another new, I would say maybe, provision is the permanent residence permit. Why new provision? Because previously it was you should have a criteria of 10 years residency in Mauritius to be able to apply for permanent residence permit. But this has changed over the years. Regulations have been passed that now the investor, the professional, the self-employed, even the retired non-citizens can apply for the permanent residence permit. But of course, there are certain conditions to be met pertaining to that. With respect to the professional, it would be normally 150,000 rupees as salary over 3 years. For the investor, the occupation permit should be valid. There should be investment of 45 million rupees for the aggregate of 3 years. And as far as self-employed is concerned, it would be 3 million rupees an annual income, which they would have to show. The Immigration Act also caters for visas. Why is it important to know the provisions pertaining to visas? Is that normally one would apply for an occupation permit at the level of the BOI, they will request that you have a business visa. Frequently, people come to Mauritius on a tourist visa, and they would like to convert. But we know that I think over the last two years, this conversion is no more possible here in Mauritius. So what you have to do is you have to leave the country and come back for them to give you a business visa. Another particular legislation which is important as far as working and living in Mauritius is concerned is the Non-Citizen Employment Restriction Act. It effectively governs the employment of non-citizens in Mauritius. It makes maybe the distinction between the work permit and the occupation permit. As I said previously, the work permit is essentially delivered by the Ministry of Labour. That is less than 20,000 rupees, you go to the Ministry of Labour, you make the application. And as far as the occupation permit is concerned, it is delivered by the BOI. As I said, the criteria be it for the professional, investor, or self-employed, like I just mentioned on the first slide. However, there are some exceptions, and I don't know whether you are already aware of it, but it might be good just to mention it. A spouse of a citizen is not required to have a permit to work in Mauritius. Similarly, a member of a diplomatic mission, or even a foreign student in working on a part-time basis, minimum of 20 hours, is not required to have a work permit in Mauritius. Those exceptions are embodied in regulation under the Non-Citizen Employment Restriction Act. Either once you are in Mauritius, either you would like to acquire property for business purposes, or it would be for personal purposes, like let's say you would like to have an apartment, a house. Previously, it was only the PMO who would give the approval pertaining to acquisition of immovable property, but the law has been changed on the Non-Citizen Property Restriction Act. So now there are various categories. You could seek the authorization of the PMO for certain issues, like for acquisition of shares in companies holding freehold or leasehold property. Or if you are not registered as an investor, you would normally seek the authorization of the PMO to acquire property. Similarly, if there is a lease of immovable property for more than 20 years, or lease of immovable property for residents of less than 4 years. Where the BOI here has a role to play is for the acquisition of property for business or industrial purposes. This, if you are an investor and you want to acquire immovable property for those specific purposes, then the approval should be sought from the BOI. And last year, the amendments also that have been made pertain to apartments in condominium developments of at least 2 levels above ground. So that now, if a non-citizen would like to acquire an apartment in Mauritius, they just need to seek the approval of the BOI. The exception to the authorization, again, is contained in the Non-Citizen Property Restriction Act, but if we just have a look at the first four heading under authorization of PMO, it can be deducted that normally for a lease of immovable property of less than 4 years, you won't need the approval. Similarly, for a lease of immovable property for less than 20 years by a person not registered with the BOI, you won't need the approval either. It may be you as an employer setting up a company, or yourself being registered as a professional. The provisions of the Employment Rights Act are really important to bear in mind whenever you are employing someone or yourself are employed by a company. At the level of the BOI, from experiences from application we have made for occupation permit for professional, when application is submitted, the BOI would have a look at the provisions of the employment contract. They would need to ensure what is the salary, the remuneration package of the person, so as to know whether the person falls under the qualification of a professional. Also pertaining to conditions of employment, whether the employer will take all the responsibility pertaining to repatriation of the professional himself, and termination. Why termination might be important for both employees and employer is that there are specific provisions under the Employment Rights Act pertaining to termination of non-citizens. So those provisions should be borne in mind whenever there is termination of non-citizens. The Recruitment of Workers Act and Equal Opportunity Act also are important when dealing with non-citizens, be it as employers or employees. Income Tax Act. When normally you will have an occupation permit or even a residence permit, you will be considered effectively as a resident in Mauritius. Being considered as a resident in Mauritius means also that you will be subject to income tax. Resident individual will normally be subject to income tax on income except on exempt income as set out in the Income Tax Act. Or if you are not a resident, you will only be subject to income tax pertaining to whatever income you have derived in Mauritius except exempt income. Of course, there would be normally double taxation treaties that Mauritius have entered into. Those have to also to be borne in mind when dealing with income tax. While we are dealing with income tax on this slide, what is also important is maybe the social contribution pertaining to non-citizens. NSF, for now, we should contribute for non-citizens, so you should also bear that in mind whenever you are employing non-citizens. So this last slide, Mauritius Citizenship Act, we have had various applications from our clients. That is, once they are able to work and live in Mauritius, they love the country, they would like to stay over there, and what they really want to know how to become citizens of Mauritius. There are various ways of how to become citizens of Mauritius, and this is provided for under the Mauritius Citizenship Act. First of all, there is the citizenship by adoption, but this would concern only minor children. There is also registration of Commonwealth citizens, which might be important here. What is the criteria for registration of Commonwealth citizens is that normally you should reside in Mauritius for 5 years, but there is a discretion by the minister where those 5 years can be reduced to 12 months. But accordingly, it would be at the discretion of the minister. That is, the minister can say that those 12 months are not sufficient and you should have stayed longer. It should also maybe be borne in mind that whenever you are making an application for citizenship at the level of the PMO, the application should be well drafted. That is, you should be able to provide relevant information to the PMO. Because the PMO normally won't come back to you and say that, yes, there are missing information from your application. They would simply go through your application, screen the application, and if there are missing information, they would just simply reject the application. So it is really important that prior to sending your application to the PMO, the Prime Minister's Office, you really ensure that all relevant information are communicated to the PMO. There is registration of minor children, registration of foreign spouses as Mauritian citizens. The condition here under this particular provision is that normally foreign spouses should have lived under the same conjugal roof for a minimum of 4 years in Mauritius. So if you have lived only for 2 years, your application normally would be rejected by the PMO. Naturalization of alien or British protected person, that normally include all non-Commonwealth citizens. You should, when you submit your application, at least 12 months prior to your application, you should have resided permanently in Mauritius. And also, you should prove that during the last 7 years, over an aggregate of 5 years, you have been residing in Mauritius. The criteria now by the PMO concerning residency might differ from our interpretation. The PMO tend to think that residency in Mauritius means that the 12 months preceding your application, you should be here, you should not travel at all. We have had some circumstances where we have had to explain to the BOI why the person have traveled. Might have been for work purposes, for health reason, but that doesn't mean that it questions the fact of residing in Mauritius. So there might be different interpretation at the level of the PMO pertaining to residency. And the last one, which have been added to the Mauritian Citizenship Act, is the naturalization of investor. If an investor make a transfer in Mauritius of USD 500,000 USD and has resided in Mauritius for at least 2 years, he normally would be able to make an application to become a citizen of Mauritius. So those are the provisions under the Mauritian Citizenship Act about how you can become a citizen of Mauritius. We, at the level of the chambers, we have made various applications for occupation permit, even for the citizenship. That is why we have had a close collaboration with the BOI pertaining to the occupation permit, and I must say that the BOI is very helpful pertaining to the occupation permit. Guidelines being issued, information being communicated whenever there is an issue pertaining to an application. What I would recommend, maybe just as a practical experience, is that yes, the guidelines issued by the BOI are very relevant, but sometimes, given the specific circumstances, you might need specific guidance. This is where maybe prior to going to the BOI chambers or even corporate support services through the expat desk might be able to help you. I would now maybe just leave Ravi to introduce you pertaining to those services being offered, and also to why you would like, anyone would like to come to Mauritius to live and work over there. So thank you.
Christelle being, sorry, go on. I was just saying, Christelle being thorough as she is, she's covered everything what I was going to say. So I don't have to spend too much time doing this. Just one thing, adding on to what Christelle said. What's interesting is that Mauritian government and the state of Mauritius allows dual nationality. So when we talk about taking Mauritian citizenship, it is for the most part not at the cost of surrendering whichever citizenship you may be. I know that for India, it's not possible. If you take a citizenship outside of India, you have to surrender the Indian passport. But most countries have no issues with it, and Mauritius certainly is very recipient to that. I also agree with what Christelle's been talking about BOI, and may I just extend that to the rest of the government services. Our experience certainly dealing with a lot of the parastatals and the authorities is one of facilitation. They would like to see completed documentation, but maybe with the exception of the PMO, and perhaps that is for security purposes, all the other agencies are very open about maybe letting us know where the shortfalls may be. Because of the specificities of each of the application, we would recommend that you, prior to submitting your application to an institution like BOI, for example, either have a working session with them or employ or engage someone like ourselves to be able to screen and give you the right advice. Because the guidelines that are available or have been instituted for what are standard cases. But for the most part, the cases are anything but standard. So that is the only other point I want to make to what Christelle was saying. I'm a total convert as far as Mauritius is concerned. And I thought maybe we could just tell you why Mauritius, compared to many other jurisdictions that are available. Tax is a very big component of why Mauritius. It's one of the best, lowest tax jurisdictions that I've known, certainly compared to many, many other countries. And the point I want to make about tax is that the whole concept of taxation is based upon taking some money from those who can afford to be able to use it for the rest of them. And I think Mauritius does it so very well. Given the kind of taxation that's available here, I mean 15% and less with the exemptions is great. And all of us live here now and we can see what is available in respect of the taxes that are paid. Whether it's the education system or the public infrastructure system and so on and so on. I could have given you a case study about personal income taxes, but I'm not sure that would be relevant here, so I'm not talking about it. But if there are things that you wish to understand about how taxes are structured in Mauritius, whether for a person, for a company, either in the domestic sphere or internationally, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to give you some preliminary advice. And then pursuant to whatever else you may have specifically for yourselves or your clients, we're happy to handhold that process. Property investment, again, land is comparatively very cheap here. And I'm obviously saying this with all due respect to my Mauritian friends who think land's expensive, but actually land is very cheap. There is a beautiful return in rental kind of equation available, and that then gets supported with the rest of the business opportunity and facilitation that the likes of BOI and every other parastatal are here to do for us. There is, I travel a lot in Africa and I've also done some work in India, and I can tell you that kind of framework and facilitation that's available in Mauritius, for Mauritians of course, but also for non-Mauritians, is to take a leaf from. I know that the Rwanda Development Board has come here and studied how the Mauritian facilitation takes place. I know Mr. Sithanan is now working with the Rwanda Development Board to see how best they can integrate all that. But there's a lot of work that's gone in, and there's a whole lot of business facilitation available, and every time we get a new budget, irrespective of the governments, there are new points that are available to promote business, as I said, for Mauritians of course, but also for non-Mauritians. Then the banking sector is robust. We are Basel III compliant. We have a good PLR compared to many other countries because of the stability of the money here, because of the inflation index here. It's quite nicely done. Foreign exchange is also freely available. I know that banks are flush with money. If you have an investment project or your clients have something, they'll be more than happy to look at it. We'll be more than happy to help you put in touch with the right financiers, if that's the right word. Health, education, infrastructure, connectivity, as I said, it's there for everyone to see. It's a good standard of living. We have a fairly good pool of doctors, accountants, lawyers, and just business professionals who help us conduct our businesses and lives in a more smooth fashion. Human resource, Mauritians are bilingual. There's a very strong education pool here. University of Mauritius and the entire Mauritian education system is geared towards servicing international needs and being up to speed with what's happening internationally. There is a very strong pool of lawyers who understand both the domestic and the international jurisdiction. And all these are pivots, I would say, in helping people wanting to come and live in Mauritius and work here and maybe spend the rest of their lives here. In terms of what's available as tools to be able to make that journey smoother. Property protection, intellectual property protection with the Data Protection Act and the offices here. Again, if you're registering companies, Christelle mentioned something about the sandbox license. I think if you look at startups, for example, who could be based anywhere, that kind of facilitation through BOI and through the Data Protection Office is available. Now, those regulations and the framework may be specific, but if you approach companies like ourselves, we'll be able to then again assist you as to how your case is to be put together in a way that's profitable for you, be legal, and gets done smoothly. Cross-border transactions, of course, money is totally repatriable here. You can bring in, take out money from any of the sources so long as the source of funds is kosher. We obviously do not want to get drug money or arms money, that kind of stuff. So there are checks and balances. Those checks and balances are actually to protect the real investor. It's not to put the investors into any kind of peril. It's to make sure that when you are investing in any way in Mauritius, or if you're taking money out of Mauritius, your investment is safe. So, as far as judiciary and arbitration is concerned, if any of you read the papers and just follow the law, just follow the news here, you'll see that irrespective of how litigation is approached, the judiciary has a very strong role, and therefore your rights as an investor, as a citizen, as a non-citizen are very well protected. And now Mauritius also added an arbitration seat here, which is particularly important for large investors in Mauritius, because arbitration is now becoming more the norm than going to a court of law. And because Mauritius is a signatory to ICSID, to UNCITRAL, and now it has its own seat here, it gives us an edge as a jurisdiction when it comes to looking at any of the investment deals and disputes. IPPA is Investment Protection Promotion Act. This is very, very important for investors from outside Mauritius investing in Mauritius. It guarantees, quasi-guarantees your investment. It will never be expropriated. It's never going to be, in any peril whatsoever. So, certainly from my perspective, the platform that Mauritius offers to live and work is actually second to none. It's a very good balance of maybe an Asian African kind of society, which has maybe a European infrastructure, and as far as the rule of law is concerned, and as far as the fiscal platforms are concerned, and that makes for quite a nice balance. And as I said, the top one is the tax. You pay exactly for what services you're getting. You know that it's going to be your tax money is going to be deployed correctly, and of course you know that your tax money that you give out is far less than what you give out in many other countries. Christelle's already spoken about it. The point that I'd like to make is that Mauritius doesn't have any withholding taxes, or it doesn't have any capital gains taxes. So, for example, when you buy property here, and if you decide to sell it at a premium, the difference in many other countries would be taxable to up to 30%, which is not the case in Mauritius. That is standard for Mauritian property buyers and non-Mauritian property buyers. Again, the business opportunity, biotech's a really big one. We've got now 3-4 interested queries for people wanting to set up biotechnology companies here. Some of the legislation or the kind of permits required for these companies are not quite clear, which is where the sandbox license comes in handy. But as I said, in those cases, it's perhaps just better to use specialist services like ourselves. I'm not suggesting you come only to us, you can perhaps go to anybody else. But it may be better to just go through a specialist company who understands maybe the framework that's available, the facilities that's available, and what it is that between the investor and the regulator or the facilitator needs to traverse. Christelle's already spoken about all of these things, so I'm not going to go into any other area. There is the point of diaspora citizens. They have their own facilitation now. They can come and invest in Mauritius, and they have tax breaks attached to those. That idea behind that was to bring in all the Mauritian talent that's been contributing to the other economies and get them to come back here and maybe continue their contribution here as well. Chris has also spoken about the occupation permits. The other one that we want to talk about is the short-term occupation permit. It's again a facility available for people who are here on a short-term basis. The permit may be extended only once for a period not exceeding 3 months. These are the services we offer, as I set out in my initial introduction. Please, my cards are available to all of you. Christelle's here. Let us know how we can be of help to you and your clients. And of course, if there are anything specific that you want to raise during the Q&A or when we have a cup of coffee, we'll be more than happy to sort of hear you out. And maybe now invite Nirmala to come and tell us what BOI is doing for all of us here.